Greetings from a fishing village on the Atlantic coast. You've tuned in to Podcast Port Wen, celebrating the world of Doc Martin unofficially. I'm Chesley Wexler, and we'll be discussing Doc Martin, the medicine, the mayhem, and the marvelous people of Port Wen. Podcast Port Wen is an independent fan production, not affiliated with, endorsed by, or sponsored by Buffalo Pictures, ITV, Fox, or the creators of Doc Martin or Best Medicine. I'm happy to welcome Erica, Patty, and Doug back to the pod to discuss Best Medicine Season 1, Episode 2. These are my unspoiled people in that they haven't seen the original Doc Martin. This time we'll all get to chat together, so come through and welcome to Podcast Port Wen.
Hi, everybody.
Good to be with you.
Yes, great to have you guys. So we've got 2 episodes under our belts now. Gonna start out with probably the easiest question of all, general impressions, and I will kick this to Doug to kick us off.
It was quite a different episode. It seemed as though they sucked us in for the first week to really not like some characters, and then the second week they flipped the switch, and I'm now rooting for just about everybody. So I love the character change, and I can definitely relate to the Doctor now.
Yeah, very good. Patty, how about you?
I definitely enjoyed it, and I remember our discussion last time about, there were a couple of things hanging over that they can't drag this out too long or we're going to lose interest, and so they let us know who the little girl was, but there's still a fair amount that they haven't told us. So yeah, I'm still hooked. I still enjoyed it.
Very good. How about you, Erica?
So the assistant still annoys me. Elaine actually annoyed me more this episode than the last. So I'm not really feeling her too much. I like that I have a little bit more background of why he came originally to Port Worth, why he came back. We found out obviously about Rosemary. We also found out about his sister. So I liked a little bit more of that back information. I think we talked last week that I feel like, especially for a new series, obviously new to me, I never saw Doc Martin. I need crumbs along the way to keep me coming back. And I didn't feel like the first episode gave me enough crumbs. This episode gave a little bit more, but I'm still want to know about the blood. Still want to staying strong.
Okay. Who was the character you said that annoyed you that still annoyed you even more?
Elaine, the doctor's assistant.
The assistant? Okay.
Yeah, and about Elaine, I was disappointed that, at the end of the first episode, she seemed to become this super mature, now she can be a medical assistant, but she seemed to regress in this episode. And I agree with you, Erica. She was annoying again. And when the handyman came in to be patched up, I wish she had taken control of that instead of just doing a minor thing and instead of doing the whole thing. So I would have liked to see her do more medical stuff.
Didn't she offer it first, but Dr. Best told her no, he had it, and then he kind of had a problem, and then she did come in and took care of it?
Yeah. I thought that part of her behavior was okay. I was a little taken aback with all those people and doing a game show in his office I kind of thought, since he quote fired her in the previous episode, and she redeemed herself a little bit at the end by being so helpful with the blood thing, I thought she might be just a little more careful about what she did and didn't do in the office. So she just went right back to totally extreme things. So yeah, I was a little disappointed too.
Does she still have the bear, or is the bear gone?
The bear was gone this episode.
Good.
And I will say I did appreciate that he did ask her to come. She asked, and then he said, no, thank you. But I also felt like she reverted, kind of what you said, Patty. She reverted back to her focus of being a social media star by having everybody in that office. And I believe that might have led to why he was like, no, thank you. Like, I'm mad at, I'm annoyed with you right now, so I don't need your help. It almost superseded. But the one part I did like about that is that it really showed how close everyone in the small town is. Because if you went to the doctor's office right now and they asked you to shove marshmallows in your face, you would think they were crazy. But they live in a different kind of small town. So I thought that was kind of building on that piece.
It was interesting to me to see how crowded the office was, and they were all doing her social media stuff. And it made me wonder, are they there to be part of her social media, or do they actually have an appointment?
I was thinking the social media, or most of them at least.
I guess we don't know that, right?
Well, the one thing, I mean, they may have been there for social media, but when I think he came out of the exam room and said, "Okay, who's here for the insect problem?" And I think they all raised their hand.
You're right.
That was the second later. Yeah, the first time, I don't think they were all there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Right.
of course, I did Google that. It's a real thing.
Is it the brown moth or whatever the heck it is?
It is a real thing. And they talk at Maine. It's common in Maine.
Wow. Okay. That's cool.
Is Port Wen a real place in Maine? I did not look that up.
I didn't check that.
I
No.
can't imagine it would be because
Yeah.
in Doc Martin, this is not a spoiler, the town in Doc Martin is called Port Wen, and it's a fictional name for a little town called Port Isaac in Cornwall. So it's not even a real name in the original. It's just in the original, it's spelled as one word, and in Best Medicine, they made it 2 words.
Okay, gotcha.
I will say that I had this question about the brown moth rash thing because they all seem to say, "Oh, it happens every year." Were they leading like, was this always a problem with this person's lawn or, I guess, mice running around town? Or was it really brown moth things years before, and this just happened to be a compounded issue because everyone was playing in this random guy's dirt, which I thought was strange, but that's just a question I couldn't put in my brain.
The stuff I remember is that the brown moth thing gives you a rash, but that people were showing up with diarrhea and other things which were not symptoms of the rash,
Right.
which is how Doc Martin figured out that there's something else going on here. And that was
Yeah.
from the mice. So what's our through line in this particular episode? What do we learn? Why don't you start, Patty?
What do we learn? I mean, we
Yeah.
learned about his sister.
Hmm.
And I felt like I saw a little bit more of Louisa, and we learned a little bit more about his childhood and being bullied,
Hmm.
which isn't surprising.
Yeah. Is there anything else, Erica? Is that kind of the summary, or did you learn anything more than that?
So I did learn a little even more about how hurt the sheriff is. We saw a little piece of that towards the end of episode 1, but then he was obviously acting a little bit guyish, but like was really being vulnerable and trying to get over this person that he really cared for in a way that typically people can relate with. So I felt a little bit more like vulnerability. He did it in maybe a bit of a wonky way, but you could tell the hurt was really there.
Yeah. So the revenge dating aspect.
My opinion kept flip-flopping about him, like, during that episode because when he was just like, "Give me Viagra, I'm gonna sleep with as many people as I possibly can," kinda thing, and I was like, "Louisa doesn't s how was she with this guy for so many years? Like, she doesn't seem like this would be what she would be attracted to, like, what's going on here?" I found it interesting at the towards the end of that episode where she was saying, "What are you doing? This is not you." And so then it kinda made more sense
Hmm.
that, he's just reacting in a way that really isn't him.
Right.
And so maybe there was something that sort of connected them, even if it wasn't good enough for, like, a marriage.
Yeah. Doug, how about you? Did you learn anything that hasn't been mentioned, or is it pretty well summarized?
No, I think you guys hit the main points, but I would add that in the first episode, I would have never fathomed that Doc Martin would have opened himself up and bared his soul. So the fact that he did that with Louisa at the very end, certainly that was surprising, and I learned something about him. And I think it just opened the door to what their love interest will be,
Hmm.
because it sure seems as though there's something going on there. Even though the sheriff's still in town, I think she's got a thing for the doc.
And you thought after episode 1 when we talked that Martin really annoyed you. He just seemed like a jerk, and you didn't resonate with him at all, and you also didn't think Sheriff Mark was really much of a catch. So it sounds like you've warmed up to Doc Martin some.
Oh, absolutely. I love him now. Yeah,
Good.
I've gone from not liking him at all. I mean, he's practicing medicine. He's doing medical technical things, even though they're not popular. And now he's got potential squeeze in the future. Perfect.
That's funny. But Mark still doesn't seem like much of a catch, right?
Not to me.
What do you think, Patty?
I not really, but I'd be interested to see what they do with that character going forward because of the speech that Louisa gave about this is not you.
Mhm.
And I found myself saying, really? Because it seemed exactly like what I thought he was. So
Yeah.
what is he? So you're going to
Absolutely.
have to show me a change for me to like him, really.
Erica, do you have any opinions on Sheriff Mark?
Well, as I said, I do like that he has become a little bit more vulnerable with you could see that he is a little bit more upset. His erratic behavior is based on internal struggle, which he's not portraying on the out front to the people in town. But I do find that I think he's a little bit goofy. I would definitely not be dating him. Like when he runs out after the jail cell and the dog runs away and he's like, "Oh, my only prisoner and I lost them too." It's like, "Oh, bumbling police officer. We've seen that before."
Yeah.
So my vote's still out on him.
Mhm. No, that's understandable. I'm kind of hoping he settles down a bit. So are you hooked, Erica? And why or why not?
I am hooked because I have enjoyed this conversation and last week's conversation. And I get to learn more of the things that maybe I didn't pay attention to or a different point of view. I'm less hooked this week than I was last week. I didn't think enough stuff happened this week that really just dug in. However, I am still curious about the blood thing. And I do relate really well. Almost 5 years ago now, I moved from the city, New York City, to a small town. And I can relate to some of the baked bean supper, and he's shocked that it happens every single month. And like everybody knows each other. And well, this doctor did it this way, or this person did it that way. And it's a very hard nuance to get adjusted to. So I
Yeah.
can relate in that, and that part hooks me a little bit more. So I'm still on the fence.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting when Jeannie, the teacher's assistant, says like the closest other person to date was like 75 miles away in a ferry ride or something like that. And you really get a sense of this is Podunk, Maine, right?
Yeah.
Very relatable comment.
Yeah. Patty, how about you? Are you hooked or no?
Pretty much. I don't know if I can give you exact lines to quote, but I felt like I laughed out loud a little bit more in this episode than the first one. So yeah, I'm interested, and yeah, he's a quirky character, but I think I said last time that he's close enough to people that I feel like I've seen in my career that, and maybe a little bit of me or my husband are that way, so I can relate. I don't
I absolutely relate to that. How about you, Doug?
Yeah, I totally agree with Patty on that. I just love the doc and I can totally relate to him. I see some of myself in him and I've gone from really not caring for him to really rooting for him. It's like you do the right thing and good things will happen. So yeah, I'm hook, line, and sinker for me.
Oh, very
Totally,
good.
totally in. DVR is all set up for the future.
Oh, excellent. Of course, I am in it for the long term, so I'll be here every week. Is this show fundamentally new guy comes to town, everybody is odd, and he's the normal guy? Like, is this the sort of standard big city guy moves to little place and quirky people, or is there something different about this show?
Well, I would say it's big city guy who's very odd moves to an interesting small town, but I would say he seems to be the odd person out
Okay.
at this point. I mean, if you look at Louisa, she seems pretty normal. Aunt Sarah seems pretty normal. Now the sheriff, that's a different story, and his assistant is certainly they're interesting characters, but he's a little odd, fish out of water.
Erica, have you ever met anybody who's like Elaine as far as being like so connected? Because you had made a comment last week that sort of this generational thing where everybody needs to be perfect and presented and everything's recorded and all that. I mean, have you seen anybody who's like Elaine? Maybe she's a little extreme, but you've seen people like that?
Yes, I have. They are stuck on reporting out on everything they eat, everything they wear, everything they do, every step of their day. And it really engulfs their lives.
Or people unbending and bending paper clips back? Yeah. How about you, Patty? Do you know anybody like this?
Nobody that extreme, but in comparing my children and nieces and nephews and how they use social media, and all of them are, or almost all of them are having kids now, and some of them put every little thing their kids do on social media. Some never put their kid on social media. So it's interesting to see the differences. But I would say more of my relatives don't put their kids on social media.
Okay. So she's a real person, but she might be magnified a little bit for the purposes of the show.
Oh, that's it's TV. I mean,
Yeah.
they always exaggerate, I think.
Right. Right. True. True.
Tesla, could I jump back to something you asked Doug about? Is he the quirky one or is the small town quirky one?
Mhm.
And I love Doug's perspective, but I also can see it from the other side. Again, saying that I 5 years ago moved from New York City, Hoboken area to a smaller town. I did grow up in a similar small town like this, and then I left and I came back. And when I came back, I felt like everyone here was the quirky one, and I wasn't because I came from a different environment for more years than I was alive. I lived up in that area. And that's not to say that one's right or wrong, but I would be really surprised coming here, moving here and finding out some of the things that are just the normal things people do weekly, monthly, yearly, the events in town. I was very shocked because I hadn't been, I would have been shocked about a baked bean supper every single month. That would have shocked me, but it wouldn't shock anybody else because they're from here.
Right.
So I think it's relative of like he's the newcomer, so he appears weird, but is he weird or is the town weird? I'm not saying one's right or wrong, but I
Mhm.
think you can see it from both sides.
Sure. So, Patty, you want to be a tiebreaker or do you have an opinion?
Well, when you asked that question, the first TV show that popped into my mind was, I think it was called Northern Exposure, where a doctor that I think maybe was from Long Island or someplace fairly big city, certainly more so than Alaska, moves to Alaska. And in that show, I did feel like he was more normal, maybe a little selfish or whatever, but not really weird. And those characters in that show were definitely quirky. So in that TV show, I definitely think it was a more normal person going to a place where everybody was quirky. This one, I think it's mostly the other way around. I feel like he's quirkier than most of the residents of Port Wine.
What do you think makes him quirky, Patty?
I just think he's so focused. Possibly he's on the autism spectrum. I don't know. He's just so intent on I fix people who have illness and curing people and won't give up on that. And gee whiz, isn't that the kind of doctor you want? So, and I think being bullied, he just felt, think he feels like his skills as a physician are so much better than his skills dealing with people. So he just tries to escape from dealing with people.
It's a good perspective. He doesn't seem to like being touched.
Right. Everyone on the autism spectrum is not identical, but
Right.
that is a fairly common feature of
Yeah.
people who have autism.
Now, granted, these people who are giving him these enormous hugs are pretty much strangers to him, so that could also just be a normal human, "Who the heck are you and why are you giving me a bear hug? I just met you
Yeah.
today," right?
Yeah.
The Elaine thing, I wondered between when we leave episode 1, she's fired and working at the restaurant, and when we come into episode 2, she's employed. We don't know what happened there. I mean,
Well, I wasn't totally surprised that she would be back, but I thought she might be a little repentant and not doing that again. Because she did help him out a lot, and I think he knew it, the blood thing. And I feel like saw that maybe she had some qualities that could help him.
right. After Elaine treats, I guess it was Bert who cut himself? After she treats Bert, I think she says something to Martin along the lines of, "It was helpful to you. You might say I'm kind of invaluable." Am I getting that wrong? Because I only watched it once this time, but I thought that that's kind of the sense that she gave, almost like she's trying to play up her value to him.
Yeah, I vaguely remember something like that. I don't remember exactly what the words were,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think there was, and I think she can be right. She showed her true self. I think in the latter portion of the first episode, and I was just surprised we didn't see more of that the second episode.
Yeah. I think she was more compassionate in that first episode because he was really in crisis. Whereas this time it's Bert just needs his hand cleaned and he's not having a breakdown.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Right. It was definitely a different level of severity.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if there
Although it
was.
looked pretty bad.
Yeah, it did look bad. I think in the first episode, Patty, you had pointed out how, like, surprisingly, I actually am good at keeping a secret.
Mhm.
I wondered whether she was going to use that secret against him, and maybe that's how she got her job back.
Oh, I actually didn't think of it in that way. I thought she was saying, "You kinda misjudge me. You think I'm just this shallow person who only cares about putting stuff on Instagram or TikTok, whatever." But I have more depth than that. I didn't think she was, like, threatening him with it.
Do you think that's I think that made perfect sense in episode 1. Do you think her comments in episode 2 about, like, how invaluable she is, do you think that there's anything going on there that might make that different?
I don't know. Maybe.
Because I'm just
I
wondering
mean,
if she's gonna be angling for a raise or something. Erica, did you have a point?
Yeah, I wanted to say what I thought was interesting. There was a point where she was talking to her boyfriend and she was saying she was working on the social media stuff. And this is her, I think she said livelihood. I'm not sure. But she seems to be pushing the doctor to allow her to do medical stuff, which she seems to be very good at. So I have that thought of wondering where that storyline is going to go because just because you find an interest in something doesn't mean that's going to be your livelihood. We all know when we were 18, 25, whatever, we had different ideas of what we wanted to do when we grew up. And I wonder if she is missing an opportunity or maybe downplaying her interest in becoming a medical professional.
It's an interesting point. I also got the sense that she's not Al's girlfriend, and she was kinda making the point that she doesn't want to be tied down to him.
But he does wanna be tied down to her.
He seems much more interested in her than she in
Yeah.
him, right?
Yeah, but that might change.
Yeah, she seems to wanna keep it on the down low, which either that means she's embarrassed to be connected with him or she's got something else that's a priority, and he doesn't. He seems to be very interested in her.
He's very keen. What'd you think about those guys, Doug? The Alan Elaine, connection.
Well, I was just thinking he was being a high school boy. He was very interested in her, and I think what you all said was right on. She's like, yeah, maybe I'll have time for you, but you're definitely not my first, second, or maybe even third priority. So
Although
I mean, it was kind of rough, but she
Yeah,
she
she was upfront, though. You gotta give her some points for honesty, I
yeah,
guess.
right. Yes, I think she's pretty clear. She knows what she wants.
yeah. Although sh did Al invite her to their table at the baked beans thing? And they went, right?
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
grabbed her girlfriend and was like, "Let's go."
Yeah. I felt like she was, melting a little bit or mellowing something, like, maybe warming up to him a little bit.
Maybe she's playing a little coy.
But yeah, I was gonna say her friend that was with her kinda gave her that, like, look, like, "What am I
Yeah.
doing here? What's
Right.
going on?" You know?
Yeah.
He invited you, you said no, now I'm here, and you're gonna sit with him anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little third wheel action going on. Yeah, I agree. I didn't even think about that, but you're right that her friend did kinda give her that look, didn't she? Now, Patty, you sounded like you weren't necessarily thrilled with George and Greg, the proprietors of the Salty Breeze in the first episode. Do you like them better now?
Well, I was looking for that because I remember how Erica said she really liked that relationship, so I was kind of extra looking at, "Okay, let me watch these guys and see what they're really like," and they weren't in it very much. I did like that the one guy, he was trying to protect Louisa from seeing, her ex-fiancé with another woman. I couldn't figure out what he was doing at first, and then when he said, "Don't look out the window," it's like, "Okay, now I know what he's doing." But, I kinda like him more than the other one, maybe? I'm not sure. I have an open mind about them.
Yeah. I don't think we've seen enough of Greg yet. We've seen more of George than we have of Greg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, the show that I mentioned before, with quirky characters, I did like Northern Exposure, and I did feel like, "Oh, they've really overdone this character," but I still enjoyed them,
Okay.
so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Doug, what did you think of Sally Milo, the pharmacist? I guess that's Mark's mom.
Yeah, interesting. I think Doc Martin said it right at the end. He said, "Sally, that's a little overdone." He said, "Okay, I'll make a note of it." So she was too over the top. But I think there could be some interesting character development there, especially given the fact she's related to Mark, and Mark is kind of wackadoo. So I wonder where he got his wackadooness from.
And Erica, you chuckled when I asked about Sally Milo.
One, I thought, and maybe they will in the future, but her neck brace didn't actually fit like a normal neck brace would. She was still moving everything around. So I was curious if it was just kind of for show, if it's part of her quirky character, if something different happened. I also could not tell if her husband was still around. She talked to him, talked about him like he's present, but then I felt like she was flirting
Yeah.
with the doctor. But maybe that she's just a flirt, so the two could be true. But she was definitely over the top. It's interesting where that's going to go.
Yeah. I thought she was flirting too. I got that sense.
She's
thought
Mark's
Mark was the
mother.
bully.
She's not the bully's mother. She's the sheriff's mother, right?
Oh, sorry. I thought she was the bully's mom. Forget that comment.
Right. No, yes. She's she's Sheriff Mark's mom.
Yes.
Sorry, my bad. I thought that it was the bully's mom. My bad.
Okay. No. Yep.
The trouble I had with her is that I think of a pharmacist as a scientist. I mean, they have a lot of medical training. And that person, pharmacist, didn't mesh for me.
Yeah. She didn't seem science-y to you?
No, not at all.
One thing I've been wondering is Elaine, like, processing the insurance forms for the patients?
I had wondered that as well. I was like, all these people are here. Where's the documentation and the paperwork, and where's the money coming from?
Yeah.
But it's a small town. These people don't have a lot of money, one would assume. So, I agree. I'd wondered about that as well.
Yeah, there's like a lack of office functioning, and I'm not sure if how they're going to play that. That has been one of the questions I've had in my mind from watching a show in Britain where they have a national health system where you show your ID and you're covered, right? To the craziness of the US, and how are they just going to ignore that aspect of things, maybe? Because I haven't seen them really talk about it.
That's
But it
interesting.
seems like she doesn't even make appointments. If she doesn't make appointments, how is she going to handle insurance claims,
And there were all the patients he did see have all, even in the first episode, have all just said, just give me a prescription. As if the visit really didn't matter. It was kind of just a check the box activity. So I was curious about how that type of relationship worked with payment and insurance. However, other shows I've seen about small towns, sometimes it's because the doctor lives there and everything, there's some kind of offset. But he did go to the pharmacy and say, you better stock up on this because I'm sending people here. So there's got
Right.
to be some form of payment. It can't be free. You
Right.
can't go from a heart surgeon to freebies. I
No.
would be very shocked.
Yeah.
And he's got to, I mean, he's got to be using the insurance system of the US. I mean, I
Yeah.
can't, like Doug said, I can't imagine that this group of lobster fishermen and whatever else it is that they do will just pay cash for our healthcare. Like, there's got to be some level of healthcare, right? And I'm just wondering if they're just not going to really bring it up. That to me, that's an unanswered question I'm looking forward to getting the answer to, and that's probably just because I'm a pedant.
But to be fair, do they cover that in other medical shows? I'm not sure they really do.
But do they usually have a village doctor? And most of the things that we see that are medical shows are like the ER or house, where you're talking about all you're ever doing is the diagnostics, and there's some staff that you never even interact with who
Yeah.
must be handling all that background stuff. But they've made Elaine this major character, and that would be her function, would be appointment making and handling all of the forms, and they haven't even touched on it yet.
Yeah.
Well, I do think I think it was Aunt Sarah that said, or maybe it was Louisa, I'm not sure, but one of them said, you have to understand these people work for everything that they have. They don't have extra income. When he was confused why people just canceled and just wanted a prescription and just to move on, where he wanted to actually get to the root of the problem. So that could be part of the situation is, small town, maybe we check some boxes here and there. We don't submit this, but we submit that. If I just give you a prescription, but then again, I don't know how he makes money if that's the way it works. I don't know, but somebody did make a comment how they just don't have the money to do those types of things and to take off of work or get out of school, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it was more in that context of they can't take a day off to be home with their kid. So that's why the kid's in school. I think that was that Peter Kronk, the first kid who had the rash. Like he's not supposed to be in school, but he's in school because his mom can't just take the day off to be with him. So, Doug, do you have any questions that haven't been answered for you yet going forward?
I still think we need to know more about the accident and his time there as a child, and then there's this huge gap of, so you're a heart surgeon, you've been single all your life. I was really surprised that he opened himself up to Louisa. The fact that that happened makes me think that I don't think he's been alone his entire life.
Oh, no?
So I
Okay.
think that is a hole that needs to be filled in for me.
Sure. Sure. I mean, his heart might have been broken, and that's why he doesn't
Retreated
want to
from them.
make, he doesn't make connections. I didn't think that he completely bared his soul to her. I mean, he certainly told her about Rosemary, which is a huge deal, right? But he seemed to be about to tell her about the blood phobia, right? Patty, you're nodding. And instead of saying like I developed a reaction to blood, he said something like I decided to make a change in my life or something like that.
I'm with Doug that I was surprised that he revealed as much as he did, even though it wasn't everything, to Louisa in the second episode. I thought it would take longer for that much connection, because it seems like for him that was huge. I don't think it was as huge for her. So I was surprised that happened in episode 2.
That seemed
Yes,
pretty
me
quick.
too.
Yeah. How about you, Erica?
I was very surprised because he hasn't even opened up to Aunt Sarah with that much information.
Yeah. That's what it seems like. Yeah.
Right. So he meets Louisa. Episode 1, they were very combative the entire episode. Now we're in episode 2, and all of a sudden he feels more connected to her to share this information than he does with his own aunt who helped him when all of that happened when he was younger. So
Yeah.
I thought that was a little bit interesting of a dynamic.
A little inconsistent. Like, why would he just tell this stranger? Although sometimes telling a stranger is easier than telling your family.
True. True.
Now, you had mentioned as far as things that you're hoping to find out is more about the blood phobia. Like, where did that come from?
I know. I can't wrap my head around why somebody that has been a surgeon, a heart surgeon at that, because I would imagine you're going to be exposed to a lot of blood. We now know that he stopped being a heart surgeon because of the accident, the car accident. But what was it that triggered the blood thing? I don't get it. And I really want to, I need to hear more about that for sure.
I had assumed that the phobia came because he saw this 8-year-old girl on the table.
Oh.
But it doesn't quite make sense, does it? It doesn't quite
Yeah.
hold together, right?
Yeah.
That's
It makes sense that he froze because he saw the 8-year-old girl on a table, but why that would suddenly make him afraid of blood versus afraid of something else, I'm with Erica. There's a big gap there. That's probably gonna, and I'm not expecting it to be fully answered in episode 3 either.
Mhm.
Maybe a tidbit.
We did learn he was in the car when she was killed.
Yeah. So maybe he's not gonna feel responsible.
And I'm wondering who was driving. Like, was it his parents driving? Like, were they all in the car? And why did his parents shunt him off to Aunt Sarah after this happened?
That would really be heartbreaking to take.
Yeah. I mean, unless they're dealing with their grief and thought it was better for him to be away from it. We don't know that yet.
Yeah, that was my thought, is that the parents were dealing with their own grief and couldn't deal with him. They needed a convenient way to put him aside so they could figure out their own problems.
But they never came back, right? I mean,
Yeah, I think all we know is that Aunt Sarah made some comment in episode 1 about your damn father. And it was in the context of he wasn't allowed to come back for some summers. Like he had to stop coming because of his damn father. But that was it. Like it was a very sketchy thing. It was on the boat when they first saw each other.
yeah. But didn't he go to high school in that town? So
I don't know, did
what
he?
do we
I don't
have
know.
from-
I don't remember that.
Well, the bully. I mean, he got bullied by that kid. Was that?
But did they talk about school? I just had the sense that it was like he was moping around and sad and they made fun of him because he was sad, but Did they talk
could have
about
been
being in
just
school?
while he was on vacation. Maybe I'm making a leap here.
I'm gonna rewatch the episode just so I can figure stuff out because you know.
Thought he said he was there for the summer, but in such a small town, you would think you'd run into kids on the playground,
Mhm.
at a restaurant, grabbing ice cream. But I am also the other unanswered question that I have is every single person but Aunt Sarah and the bully brand new to this town that no one's ever seen him before? Like there's got to be somebody else in town that was there when he was there previously. Maybe that'll be developing. Maybe they'll bring
Yeah,
more people
we
out
might.
and whatnot,
Yeah,
but I
we might
seemed a
learn
little
that.
odd that like now there's two random. When it was just out Aunt Sarah, I understood it's a familial relationship, so she would know him, obviously, know his history. But now this episode we are introduced to this bully who knew him back then. Is there no one else in for such a small town to think there's only two people that have been there for 30 years, 20 years or whatever? That's pretty far fetched. So maybe they'll develop that more. I don't know. Maybe we'll introduce new characters.
The very first people we meet are the panel who interviews him, right? And there's certainly older people on there, like Dee Dee Khan's character. We don't even know her name yet, I don't think, but she's been in both episodes. I don't know what role she plays, but like, has she been there forever? She's old enough to have been there when he was a child.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing to keep our eyes open for. Did any of you guys watch episode 1 more than once?
No.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I watched it 3 times, and I found every time I watched it, I liked it a little better. So I'm gonna watch this one more than I didn't have time to do it more than just yesterday, but I'm probably gonna watch it again just because that's what I do. I've probably watched the original series 8 to 10 times.
That's why you're in that chair.
That's why I'm
Yeah.
the host of the podcast, you know? So what do you think's gonna happen? Patty, what do you think is coming?
Well, I think we're going to get some more tidbits about the blood thing. I don't know. I'm not sure if there was kind of a disease of the week this time. I don't know if it's going to be that way every week or not. I'm thinking probably not. I think more small town quirkiness. I don't know.
I'm not sure if I think it or I want to think it or want it to happen. I think we'll get more reasons to like Doc Martin,
Mhm.
Dr. Best. He'll be more endearing as time goes on.
Okay. How about you, Erica?
I'm hoping, and I think what's going to happen is obviously more character development. I'm hoping for a development in the relationship between Elaine and Dr. Best. I'm hoping she has a realization of where I think her career is actually going versus where she wants it currently to go. Obviously, there's the romantic aspect, so I think that we're going to see more of him and Louisa connecting on that level. I'd also like to see him, and I'm hopeful that he's going to start embracing the small town stuff little by little. He did show up at the Baked Bean supper. That's a huge step for someone that
It's a big
doesn't want
deal.
to interact with anyone. And he didn't try to cancel it because he didn't like it, but he did try to cancel it. So we'll see more small town things. We all know these shows have tons of different events every month. So I think we'll see more town events, and how will he engage with those?
Yeah. That's a good perspective because you're right. He didn't try and cancel it except as a health emergency.
He didn't seem to care that people were upset. In his brain, the medical emergency was much more important than baked beans, especially baked beans that you get every month, or the brown bread, or all that other stuff.
Although he thought it was once a year.
Yeah. I think that once a month was kind of unrealistic, to tell you the truth, even in a small town. Like, wouldn't people get tired of baked beans?
But
I
not
mean,
for nothing.
yeah.
I love this idea of like a town dinner where everybody puts their feuds aside and comes together. We could use that in a lot of places. Not a bad idea.
Maybe not for baked beans. I don't think I'd go for baked beans, but pizza, sign me up.
But baked beans, if they're really good, and that brown bread sounded mighty tasty. And the lobster rolls. Apparently George makes like award-winning lobster rolls.
I'll take one of those. I'll take 2 of those too.
There you go.
That would be me. Yeah.
That wouldn't be bad. So do you guys have any other points you want to make about the episode we saw?
I have one. This isn't just this show. It's every show on TV. Does no one have screens on their windows? And do people really leave the window open with no screen? I just don't think that doctor, that character would do that. But that's the only way the dog can hop into the house. So they have the window open and the dog goes in. And I was like, screens have been around for many, 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 many years. And don't most people use them? I never open my window unless the screen is there. Never.
And in Maine, don't they have like black fly problems during May or something?
Yeah, all kinds of things.
I was just about to say that. Yes, I believe Maine, also northern New York, northern Vermont. Yeah, they're biting the black flies.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. But one thing that constantly got me was you're not going to be able to get the dog to leave your house if you close the door after it comes in. I'm like, he closes the door and he's going, get out, get out. I'm like,
how?
How?
Through the open window,
which has no screen.
We obviously have a brown moth problem too, so you'd think screen might help with that.
Right, let's bring more brown moths in. I don't know. I just noticed that and I was like, oh, come on.
That is funny. That's funny. Very good. Well, I hope you guys are willing to come back next week. Sounds like you are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. If you'll have us.
I thoroughly appreciate having my 3 best medicine unspoiled people to talk to. And I appreciate your time. To anybody who's listening to this, I hope that you'll like the podcast and subscribe to the feed. And at this point, we're going to end our best medicine only. And you're going to want to drop now if you don't want spoilers, because the section coming up is going to have Doc Martin people. So thank you guys. And we'll see you next time on Podcast Port When.
All right.
Thanks.
This is the point where if you haven't seen Doc Martin, you want to stop listening. I'm now going to launch into a discussion with the people who've seen Doc Martin. And if you don't want to learn spoilers about Best Medicine, the Best Medicine only viewers, this is where you should stop. This is my final warning. Welcome to Judy and Chris. Judy's a familiar face. She's my newbie who has watched through season 8. Chris is in Western New York and joins me for the first time, at least on the podcast. In real life, when he's home, he's my watching partner. So when I say my husband and I yell at Martin, he is my fellow yeller. We'll be discussing Best Medicine, Season 1, Episode 2, with Doc Martin fans. So, welcome to Judy and Chris. Come through and welcome to Podcast Port When.
Hi.
Nice to see you, yes. Especially when you're not home.
Not quite in person, but
I didn't realize you were broadcasting from 2 different states.
For people who might be watching this from another country, Chris is in Western New York, and the show is filmed in what's called upstate New York. And there's about a 5-hour and 30-minute drive between the 2 places, which gives you a sense for how vast the ground is.
somewhere around 300 miles.
Judy's watched through season 8 of Doc Martin. Chris has watched all the way through season 10. So Chris has to avoid spoilers. I have to avoid spoilers. But this is all about Best Medicine from the point of view of Doc Martin fans. Season 1, episode 2. How about some overall impressions?
I think this episode was better than last episode, in my opinion. I liked that it got into some deeper reasons for things the way they were, as they mentioned, talked about his blood phobia and how it developed with his sister dying in a car crash. And then he just had a patient his same exact age as his sisters, and that's when he froze. So I liked that it got into that more. I liked that the relationship with the doctor and Louisa seemed to develop nicely and seemed like it developed kind of naturally. I did like that. Health crisis that he faced in the town, while it had some similarities to things in the original Doc Martin, it wasn't exact. So I liked that there was a little bit of a difference there. And there was also a difference in the original Doc Martin. He threatens to shut down major events for health reasons, I think a couple of times. So one of the barbecues because they had tainted meat, and the other was the fish guy may have had a contagious illness. And that created a big stir. And they brought that in with this baked bean dinner, I guess.
Yeah.
And his concern over the brown moth.
Right.
Or wait, what was he did not think was the brown moth thing.
Yep. So not in Batigo this time.
Yes, right. So, I liked that it wasn't a carbon copy of the original.
So Judy, that's like the pasty eating competition. It comes to mind, I think, when you're talking about the tainted meat.
Was that a pasta eating competition?
I think it was the pasta eating because he gets meat thrown at him. The guy throws a pasty at him and it gets in his hair.
Right. Okay.
Chris, what's your general impression of episode 2?
I also thought it was much better than the first episode. I liked it better. What I kind of got an inkling for in the first episode was that Doc Martin Best, is a pretty sympathetic character. The first episode, I thought, it seems like a reasonable person. I sort of like him. The second episode sort of confirmed that he's really a very reasonable person. He's got certain things that he's sort of set in, but what does he do? He sees sick people and he makes them better. And everything that he does is sort of geared towards that. So he tells people what they should do to get better. And when they don't follow his advice, he gets annoyed, which is kind of reasonable because he's trying to do the best he can. And he is kind of thwarted by other people not following his advice, his expert medical advice. So I thought he's a sympathetic character and I like him. And we'll contrast that with the original where Martin Ellingham is definitely an unsympathetic character. Still motivated by making people better, but not really very likable. Whereas Martin Best, I like him.
I agree with you, Chris. I think Martin Best seems a whole lot less rigid. He has certain things that he does in certain ways, but he seems a whole lot more flexible and less rigid. And he doesn't have that constant annoyance, like that demeanor of being constantly annoyed with people, like Martin Ellingham has.
Yeah, being arrogant. Martin Best, I believe he believes that he knows a lot more about medicine than other people, and he uses it to help people, but he doesn't come down as condescending or arrogant. He's trying to do the best thing he can. Whereas Martin Ellingham, you ignorant slobs, I'm going to tell you what to do, and if you don't do it, the hell with you, essentially. I don't get that sense of Martin Best.
Martin Ellingham, I think, comes into the village, and the show is, to me, definitely based on fish out of water. This guy is the new thing that doesn't belong. Whereas Martin Best, to me, does not seem at all like he doesn't belong there. I mean, this little village seems perfectly reasonable for a person like a Dr. Martin Best to live there. It's possible he lives there in order to commute to a city versus actually working in town. But to me, he does not seem as if he doesn't fit in. He's just somebody who doesn't want to interact with people. I don't even know if I would say that he seems like an introvert. He just seems like he wants to keep his own company.
One of the things I noticed too is that when he went to the baked bean dinner, though he had a suit jacket on, he had his shirt undone. So to me,
and no tie.
No tie, where Martin Ellingham would always be in a suit and tie. And again, that to me made him a little more approachable or less awkward.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah. He fits in better.
Agreeing to write a prescription for the dog. Martin Ellingham would never have done that at all.
No.
Martin Best?
Nope.
Okay. The dog might be important to you. Okay. We'll do it. But only this once. Yeah. Martin Ellingham would never do that. So it shows some flexibility, a desire, not necessarily to fit in with his environment, but to sort of accommodate it and accommodate the people around him.
Yeah, and it may be a bit of empathy towards people that Martin Ellingham doesn't seem to have. Dr. Beth, while he probably would not prescribe human medicine or give his dog human medicine or even have a dog, but he could sympathize that he didn't want to see this dog suffer, and he was willing to do something Martin Ellingham would never do.
Another point that I would make, comparing this show to the original. In the original, the other characters besides Martin and Louisa, Sally Tischel, well, including Sally Tischel, were fairly normal people, sometimes doing strange things, but generally normal people doing normal things. In this show, Best Medicine, most of the other people are sort of bizarre, over the top. I mean, Mark talking about his need for Viagra, the woman and her daughter with their diarrhea noises.
Yeah.
Way over the top. The bully sort of trying to continue to be a bully, just sort of way over the top. You could see how a normal person in that situation would react to these other people and say, boy, you guys are crazy. And so the Martin Best looking at these other people is because I sympathize with Martin Best, and I can see these other people could be really annoying. And in the original, Martin Ellingham is annoyed with everybody, and the other people are sort of doing normal things. So his reaction is a little unusual. Here, the other people are really unusual and bizarre, and Martin, being sort of a normal person, would still have this reaction like, you guys are insane. But they are insane. So it's kind of flipping the show in that sense.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is the spoon on the nose, podcast episode that Elaine was filming with a full waiting room of supposed sick people that were all participating in this. And then the marshmallow eating craziness. Yeah. And then the gas and diarrhea noises. And listen, I love a good fart joke, but that just was, that was it was ridiculous. And like I go into a doctor's office, I want professionalism, and that just made it a total complete joke of the whole thing. And the only thing I could say is as far as Elaine doing these things is that she's got something on Dr. Best in that she's aware of his blood phobia. And he hasn't. I thought he was going to come out to Louisa with it, but he didn't. So it's still under wraps. But I just can't. To me, like no one would ever allow such nonsense. And these are supposed to be sick people, right? They're supposed to be in the office because they're not feeling well, and they're putting a spoon on their nose. And
Chris, you took a very objective viewpoint that I hadn't considered, which was I was looking at the characters like Mark Milo and the people who are very much over the top. And I wasn't assuming that these were over the top human beings that live in a little village, and Martin's sort of the normal guy who's going, what the hell's up with these people? My view, and I think it's because from a Doc Martin perspective, that show to me seems so much more like these people are all real and there's just a camera crew capturing them versus this show is a sitcom that's being filmed. And so I took the angle of, I really don't like the way these characters are written and acted. Whereas you've taken the tack of these people are actually, the camera crew did arrive. These are all wackadoodles here, and Martin's the only normal one. Very interesting perspective.
Yours is more logistical, I think. I don't know, sort of a meta level. That what are we looking at? We're looking at a sitcom versus looking at a sort of a day in the life.
And it's a dramedy versus a comedy. Doc Martin is a dramedy where comic things happen. And Best Medicine, they have leaned into the comedy, I think.
Absolutely, they've leaned into the comedy. And I think unless it's a slapstick variety show, I think you do need to be able to see a little reality, whether it's a comedy series like Friends, or you do need to see things that could potentially be real but funny, because there are some funny things that happen in life that are real life things. And I couldn't suspend my disbelief with a couple of those scenes. I just couldn't. I just was like, come on, this is over the top.
A good show will have you have some empathy with the characters. You can believe them. With this show, I like Martin. Another person we haven't talked about is Aunt Sarah. Yeah, Aunt Sarah. I thought she's also sort of a very naturalistic character in this. Louisa, sort of halfway. I think the way that they're developing the relationship between Martin and Louisa is okay. I hope they're not going too fast. Right now, it looks like they're becoming friends. That's about it, and that's fine. The Bert character, I think, also seems fairly realistic. He doesn't seem that over the top to me. Al is okay.
I kind of think Al and Elaine the age to me doesn't seem to match. He seems too young for her, to me.
I agree. He looks like a kid compared to her, I think.
I don't know, respectfully disagree. They look pretty much of an age to me.
Okay. Well, and then sometimes the girls do oftentimes look more mature than the boys do at certain ages. So who knows?
As a teacher, I've seen high schoolers of all ages, teenagers, so they sort of fit right in. Teenagers, maybe a little bit more, early 20s. Well, of course, if
Yeah.
they're trying to hold down jobs, yeah, probably early 20s.
Yeah. It seemed like Elaine had said in episode 1 when she got fired, I've had this job since I was 16, and I got a sense that years had passed, right? So she's not a teenager, I wouldn't think. And he's got to be out of school, otherwise he wouldn't be working during the day. Chris, you were saying how they've like flipped the original show on its head. I remember seeing an interview with Martin that the way they chose to approach it was exactly that, which is it's almost a trope to have the big city guy shows up in the village, ha ha ha, looking at them, aren't they silly, as a storyline. So Doc Martin, Dr. Ellingham, they didn't do that. They intentionally said, he shows up there. He's the guy who everybody says, ha ha, look at him. He's the one that's odd. Whereas this show is like the trope. And maybe that's all they think Americans can handle. I don't know.
Found it interesting that they do have in the original Doc Martin, I always thought it was so odd that that group of girls would always show up and walk by and say something snarky and nasty. Tosser. Every time they turned around, they would show up and just nasty and mean. And they actually do have a similar crew in Dr. Best or Best Medicine that kind of always are walking by with a little something to say. And although at the baked bean dinner, they actually had something positive to say about his suit and that he looked good.
They seemed a little bit more believable in this episode versus in episode 1, I thought.
Agreed.
Yeah. We see a little bit more kindling of the friendship with Martin and Louisa. We learn about Rosemary. Does that seem like a reasonable explanation for what's going on with him?
I'd say so, yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Are we to assume that he was sort of normal ahead of that? I believe we get a sense from this bully, right, that he was bullied by this guy as a kid for being sad, and they called him Eeyore, right? And so his personality of being more introverted and holding his own company could have come from the experience of losing his sister and being sort of made fun of in his summers, and his parents sent him away thinking maybe it was better for him, but it wasn't better for him. And then the blood phobia problem, it kicks in this surgery. It's all tied back to Rosemary. I mean, is that like a believable storyline for the type of person that we see?
I think so. He does make a mention that his parents sent him away and that I think they were trying to cope with their own grief as well. I think that is a totally reasonable emotion that parents who lost a child tragically might go through. And unfortunately, there's another child you have to be there for, and I'm sure it was a struggle. But I think his emotional sadness was maybe from that, and then he was in the car when his sister was killed. So, and he didn't have the blood phobia until he was confronted with a patient who was the exact age and in a car accident. It just brought all those demons out. Demons might not be the right word, but emotions out.
What do you think,
Well,
Chris?
something happened when his sister died. Yeah, his parents sent him away. So maybe his sister was the favored child and they couldn't cope with her loss. And they may have withdrawn from Martin. Martin Ellingham had his own sort of demons growing up. Doesn't sound like that. It's different, could be similar in some respects, but it's not as sort of abusive as was in the case of Martin Ellingham.
I was trying to remember, because I'm trying to focus on each episode or each season that I watch it. But I was trying to remember, have they ever said what caused Doc Martin's blood phobia to come about?
Early on, at some point, he tells Roger Fenn that he recognized for the first time that these weren't just bodies, that he was operating on human beings. They are wives, they are mothers, that kind of thing. We hear that again when he tells Louisa in the Peter Cronk ambulance he met the woman he was going to do the surgery on, and she had like a sister and a husband and a child with her or something like that, and he recognized her as part of a family unit instead of just a slab of meat, basically, to operate on.
Okay, so his kind of lack of emotion, which got him through many, many years, kind of started bubbling to the surface when he got to kind of know the patient,
Mhm.
see people as not just, as you said, a slab of meat. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So his did not stem from a tragedy. He was able to,
Recognize humanity.
yeah, yeah. And part of the thing that makes him a good doctor too is his emotional detachment,
Mhm.
and able to jump right to his training. Which that's one thing I notice about Doc Martin is that in a real emergent situation, he seems to be able to do what needs to get done despite the blood phobia. But if somebody comes in with needing stitches, it's a little bit different.
Yeah. It seems like that, doesn't it? I mean, it's like he can always meet the task when it's an emergency task. He might throw up afterward,
Hmm.
but
Or during.
yep,
But he gets it done.
he gets it done. What are you liking? What aren't you liking? Judy, why don't you start with that?
Again, I'm liking that Dr. Best seems a bit more relatable, a bit less rigid, and he's more likable. I do like that. I like the relationship with Aunt Sarah. It is interesting that they are weaving a whole lot of elements of Doc Martin's entirety into a couple of episodes. So you're getting a little taste from being a Doc Martin watcher of little snippets from different things throughout the course of the entire series are kind of uh, alluded to or mentioned in Best Medicines. The first episode I thought was a little too carbon copy. This second episode was different, and I was glad for that. And I do think the relationship between Louisa and Dr. Bess is progressing in a nice manner. What I don't care for is, again, the absurdity of what goes on in the waiting room at the surgery or the doctor's office. I used to work in HR, and I think maybe that's part of why I'm like, oh no, that would be done. They'd be done, out, fired. So that's probably an issue for me. And I want to say Penhale, but it's the Penhale like
Yeah.
character. What's his name? I can't.
Milo. Sheriff
Milo.
Milo.
Yeah, he yeah, just too much, too annoying. Maybe that'll calm down in subsequent episodes because he was just dumped. He now wants to be a kind of a go live his life and be sort of a gigolo, so he's kind of acting jerky. Maybe that'll be toned down a bit, I hope, because he's a little over the top for me.
How about you, Chris?
Well, I can echo what Judy's saying about, well, the Martin character. So I like the sort of naturalness of some of the characters, which I would say is Martin Best, Aunt Sarah, the Larges, by and large,
Or,
and Louisa, at least part of the time. Even the Sally Milo character, she seemed okay,
yeah, I liked her.
mostly. The things I don't like, the sort of over the topness. Judy, you talked about what's going on in the waiting room. Yeah, it's sort of way too much. The mark way over the top. So that, and maybe a criticism going back to the original series, the stories seem to develop very naturally and organically.
In the original.
Here, except in the original. Here in Best Medicine, things happen. Some things seem to be going naturally, but it seems that just a lot of things are getting thrown at Martin. It doesn't seem to like tie together into a whole. So it seems that it's been put together. Cheslin and I were talking a little bit about it last night, and it's like it's it 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 could be so much better if they sort of just tie the things together as opposed to sort of like chunks and chunks and chunks. Yeah, it could be like sort of flow seamlessly or almost seamlessly. So that's sort of one of my dislikes or criticisms of the show. But the naturalness of some of the characters, the natural evolution of the Martin Louisa relationship is good. And then I guess one of my pet peeves I am sometimes a very detail-oriented person. And so there's some things, I'm sorry, if you want to show a still from this, Chesley, you might bring up that cartoon. But so some sort of things that just sort of dig at me that are very small to most people. Like, how the hell does Martin Best get paid? I mean, he's hired by a village. In medicine in the United States, doctors have their own practices. Who's filling out the insurance forms? Is Elaine going to do that? How the hell is he getting paid? That just doesn't seem, whoa. And then these lab results. What world is it that he could like send results out in the morning and get the results in the afternoon?
That happens.
I mean,
I get that.
does it?
Yeah.
Well, maybe if you're near a major hospital or
Yeah,
but
they are in the boonies.
he's way off in the end of Maine. And Jeannie, the teaching assistant,
Yes.
said that like to meet another man, she'd have to drive 75 miles and take a ferry. So where the hell is this lab?
That's a really good point. Yes.
Medical lab in the center or in the edges of Maine where you can just send things and get results back? It just
but if you have to take a ferry, that really complicates things of getting them back in a day, right? Because like in Doc Martin, I always assume like the labs go to like Truro, and Truro is only an hour away, and so they test them, they could get them back pretty quickly. But we don't know the answer to how far this is from like Bar Harbor. But when she introduces the concept of a ferry, all bets are off as far as speed. And that's the kind of thing I think the writers of Doc Martin would not have missed.
Again, I think you have to try to suspend some disbelief in this program.
Yeah. I really believe that, like, actually, even the stuff that Chris said today made me think a little bit more of, okay, this is a very different show. So this show has an introverted, shy guy who had a family tragedy, was bullied a little bit, who just likes to keep his own company, comes to this little place where everybody's a wackadoodle and he's the normal guy. Completely different show from Doc Martin. And in which case, I told people online, like, Martin Best and Port Wen, as two words, is a parallel universe to Martin Ellingham and Port Wen. But now I'm really thinking that it's almost problematic. Like, they should have just gone completely different and not even called it, Doc Martin in Port Wen. They should have just made a new show. And they probably would have more Doc Martin fans not hating on it.
It invites almost too much comparison, in my opinion.
I have a friend who was, she's watching Best Medicine. She's never seen Doc Martin. And she listened to the podcast on episode 1 of Best Medicine, but she just kept on going through the segue because she wanted to know my opinion. And I was like, no, don't do that. You'll get spoilers. She goes, no, I don't care. And I told her from now on, I'll just tell you my opinion. You don't have to listen to the podcast and get spoilers. But just for yucks, we're going to watch the first 10 minutes of episode 1 of Doc Martin. I just want to get your opinion on it. And I had it going, and I said, well, that's been about 10 minutes. And she looks at me, she goes, can we watch the whole thing? I forgot all about that. This is so much better. And yet we've got Doug, who's like never seen it before. And he's had that experience of watching US ghosts, getting established, and then watching UK ghosts and not liking it. And he loves Best Medicine. He's not spoiled.
I was wondering, what an English person's take might be watching Best Medicine. Because my initial thoughts when I was watching Doc Martin was, oh yeah, this is some backwards village that he's going to in Port Wen. At first I was like, oh, the people are kind of odd and wacky and quirky. And, I don't know. Maybe that's my American opinion of things. Like when we talked about the sharing of the medication. And I was like, wow, that's kind of crazy that they're doing that. That would never happen here. I'm sure it happens here in the US too. But so I'm curious, like if a English person was watching Best Medicine, if they would be like, oh, look at those crazy typical Americans with spoons on their nose acting foolish. Like, I don't know.
Frankly, not for nothing, when I was watching the show, I was actually asking myself, like, is this a condemnation of the American public by the writers? That somehow this is what we find funny? But the thing is, I don't really feel like I can fairly make that comment because I am not a sitcom watcher. So I know that like the Everybody Loves Raymonds and those kinds of shows are a bit over the top in how they're put together. And that's never appealed to me. So the fact that this is happening, clearly there's a market for it. Who am I? I'm the snot who's making fun of it. This is something that people really like. It's just a taste thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I do think there's other sitcoms. They're a bit over the top, but like in Everybody Loves Raymond, the crazy mother-in-law, or was it his mother? I think it's his mother.
Never watched it.
Well, yes, it was crazy, but you could see where some of it's could happen. I just think that it needs to be reeled back in a little bit.
Or to what Chris says, which is this is just a village full of really like crazy. They've only ever been around one another, and that's how they all think you act, except that belies Louisa coming in from New York. So who knows?
I don't know. I think they clearly have internet. I don't think they're cut off from the world.
With podcasts, not.
The Doc Martin series, it kind of started. I didn't even think they had cell phones in the beginning when the series started. So I think they truly were kind of cut off from the bigger world, so to speak, whereas this is supposed to be present day.
If it's to succeed, at least if it's to succeed for me, I would like to see more natural people. They could still be crazy, do weird things, but
Not at work.
there has to be sort of a natural heart to that. I think some of the characters have that, but not all.
I think some of that is the choice of how the actors chose to act their part. And I'm kind of hoping that that's the kind of thing that can be reined in. I was almost thinking, gosh, can I rewrite and reshoot the Milo stuff and maybe some of the Elaine stuff to just sort of flesh out the rest of this season before it goes on too far, Overall, though, I think I'm going to go into it from now on with Chris's perspective, and I'm going to have more fun with it, because if I think that way, that Martin is the thing that's normal and everybody else is crazy, I think the show will make more sense with me.
Speaking of cut off, as he was growing up, Martin Best was sort of, I think, cut off from his parents, from a lot of their affection after the death of his sister. How did that affect him? Yeah. How did that affect him growing up? We don't know. But I mean, he comes into Port Wen alone with no attachments, as far as we know of, with the rest of the world, with Boston. It's sort of an open book as to what kind of upbringing or what kind of person he was. Maybe we'll find out more.
Aunt Sarah makes a comment that he didn't come back in Summers and she makes a little throwaway line on your father. So if you've read anything about the show, you know that Martin Clunes is going to play Martin Best's father. This is a surprise to Judy. This will be exciting. Yeah, it's coming up. I don't know, sometime this season. We'll see. And he's supposed to be a real...
That's a good reason to tune in.
Yes. And the way that they've written him up in reviews and stuff was just that he makes Martin Best seem personable and friendly.
He is.
That's the funny thing, is like he does not seem to be he doesn't seem like Martin Ellingham at all.
Well,
no, I think he carried a lot of sadness in his life, and which is why that guy called him Eeyore. But I don't think he has this terrible arrogance and impatience with people that Martin Ellingham has.
And it just could be our or my reaction, expecting somebody like Martin Ellingham and getting Martin Best. And you say, well, he's a hell of a lot more empathetic and emotionally connected than our Martin Ellingham. So, which might make him seem even more normal. But I still like the character.
I appreciate you guys spending the time being on. I hope if people have enjoyed this podcast, they'll like it and they'll subscribe to the overall feed. And hopefully I can get you guys back for a later episode, and much appreciated.
I'll definitely see you later.
Very good. Podcast Port Wen is an independent fan production, not affiliated with, endorsed by, or sponsored by Buffalo Pictures, ITV, Fox, or the creators of Doc Martin or Best Medicine.